Hi, this is Scott Geitler. I'm the owner of Bluewater Photo and Bluewater Travel, and today I'm going to talk about the new Ikelite housing for the Sony RX100 VI. Here's the housing, and as you can see, it's a very small, lightweight housing that I've done a couple dives with, and I like this housing a lot. I like the camera a lot. Let's talk about what the key features of this housing are. Now, just to recap, the Sony RX100 VI is a compact camera with a 1-inch sensor that has a 24 to 200 millimeter lens built in, which is a very large lens in terms of its focal length, in terms of its telephoto capability. So we're going to talk about how that corresponds to features of the housing. But looking at this housing, it's a very ergonomic housing. It's a very light housing, especially underwater. It feels very light. It comes with a standard port. You'll see there's a macro lens on here, an adapter that's not included. These handles are optional. And the housing has a clear back, and it has controls for pretty much everything you need. So looking at the back of this camera, the back has a nice clear plate that attaches securely on it and has the rear controls of the camera. I'm going to open this. You want to do both latches at the same time, and it pops up. Undo the latch and it opens up. Now, one thing I like about this housing, it has a very nice well-machined camera tray. I found that it's easiest to use a penny to screw this onto the camera, and they have a very nice well-machined slot where the camera just nicely squeezes in, and you lift two of the controls up, you put the camera in, you push the controls back in, and you're almost done. We're going to put the back on the camera. We're going to do both latches at the same time, and we're done. So again, after doing this process many times, I like it because it's I don't want to say 100% foolproof, but it's very hard to mess it up. The back goes on very, very nicely, very securely. There's nothing to align. There's very little to mess up. So I like this housing that it doesn't give a lot of room for user error. Not a big learning curve for getting the housing in and out correctly. So again, let's go through the controls of this housing. The shutter here works very, very nicely. It's quite precise. It's very easy to do a half shutter press. I like its location just off the handle, and I never had any problem taking the shot quickly anytime I wanted to, even if something was very fast moving. This housing has 2 fiber optic ports, and I do want to mention that it's not really a camera that lends itself well to using the internal flash. So if you're getting this camera, regardless of the housing, you're probably going to want to get some sort of strobe or constant on video light, like a Kraken or Light in Motion 3000 lumen light would be great. Or even just the Bluewater 1000 lumen focus light would be a great choice if you want to have a light that goes along with this housing. The power button right here goes on and off, works very nicely, very precise. The mode dial you push down, and it very easily and quickly changes the mode of the camera, whether you want manual, auto, aperture priority, shutter priority. The zoom function is quite easy to zoom, and by the way, what I have on here is the standard port of the housing, which supports the full zoom range. We're going to talk about another optional port later on when I'm done with the controls. So we also have on the back here, we have a rear control dial. Up here is the front control dial, and we have the menu, we have play image review, we have function, we have delete, and we have movie mode, which is it's red. It sticks out really nicely, so whenever you think, oh, start video, it literally takes a fraction of a second and just press that button and get your video going. And by the way, all these controls worked very nicely. I felt very good about the ergonomics. I never had a control slip or not work. So I think Ikelite is really doing a great job with the ergonomics of this housing. So we talked about the controls, the camera tray. I'm going to talk about the short port for a second. So if you ever want to use a wide angle lens with this camera, you have a couple options. You can get the optional WD-4 dome port from Ikelite, which will go on here and increase your field of view about 30 degrees. But if you want to do true wide angle, you'll need to get the short port. I recommend getting a strap wrench to change the ports. If you get a small strap wrench from Bluewater Photo, it takes you about 5 seconds to change the ports. You can see that there's threads that go on here, and then this short port has threads where it will take a wide angle lens, like a Nauticam WWL or a Fantasy or a Kraken wide angle lens. There's lots of the Diarun super wide. There's lots of great options that will work well with this camera with the short port. Now with the short port, you can also put on a macro lens like the Bluewater Plus 7 or the Nauticam CMC or a Kraken macro lens, but you can only zoom up to 70 millimeters on the camera. So what I was doing when I was diving is I actually just looked inside this port, and it was really simple when I zoomed in to see when I had to stop. If you don't stop and you keep going, it's going to hit the port and your camera is going to give you a message, error, please turn off camera. And you may have to do a couple times before your camera actually turns on and is working and feels like it's in a safe environment. The camera is freaking out, like, what's going on? Why is my lens not extending? So the short port does limit you to 70 millimeters. Let's talk about some other accessories you can have for this. When using the standard port, you can push on color filters. Ikelite has a tropical blue filter, a green water filter, and a yellow filter for when you're using a floral light for floral photography. This is also an optional macro adapter which pushes on. And right here I have an excellent choice with this camera, which is the Bluewater Plus 7 macro lens. And you just have to be very careful when screwing on a macro lens. Be very careful that you don't cross thread it or mess up the threads of the adapter. And you push it on, and you can zoom into 200 millimeters and you can get excellent very small super macro. So that's one of the key highlights of this camera and this rig, is the ability to do super macro. We talked about the wide angle dome, the short port. There's also an optional vacuum kit that will work in this port here, and it will give you peace of mind. You can pump your housing and it'll tell you if it's safe to dive with, if there's no leak. Again, this action tray with the right and left handles is actually sold in 2 parts, and this is optional, but it felt really good underwater. I like the slightly curved design of the handles. It's just the right size. Few other things to cover about this housing. It has a 200-foot depth rating. It has a 2-year warranty. Ikelite recently extended their warranty to 2 years, which is really nice. And I think a lot of issues people have with gear that happen after the first year, they'll be very happy to find out that Ikelite will cover all that for the 2nd year. And when you buy the housing, what comes in the box? You get the housing, you get the standard port, you get a vinyl cover for that port, you get your rear O-ring, and you get your O-ring grease. So I do recommend a spare O-ring. I recommend some spare O-ring grease. And again, there's lots of great accessories like the push-on macro adapter, the short port, the wide angle dome, the color filters, the vacuum kit, the tray and handle. So I can highly recommend this housing at a great price, $499. If you have any questions at all about this or any other accessories, please feel free to reach out to us. Sales@bluewaterphotostore.com. Thanks and have a great day.